Well, good day and welcome to this podcast. We're going to talk about fly casting. This is one of the most overlooked aspects of fly fishing, in my opinion. The more fly casts you can learn, the more tools you'll have in your toolbox. There are so many different types of casts, equipment. It's really never ending. So there's going to be a lot of you fly casters or fly fishers are going to probably specialize, maybe dry fly guys or streamer guys and so forth. Now, first of all, I want to start off with, this is not really a how-to segment. I'm going to show you some problems that you might encounter. But the first thing I want to do is thank all those guys and all those people that have done such a wonderful job online here with some really good fly casting demonstrations. Well shot videos. They got good camera crew to show the how-to step by step, very well explained. So really encourage you to watch a lot of those. You're going to see maybe some differentials because of the type of casting you're going to be doing. So one cast is the basic cast that you want to know that kind of crosses over on all aspects of fly casting. Now that is basically the whole concept is your fly line for a tight loop, you must travel in a straight direction. So I just put a little round ball on the end of my rod here just to show you. So it must travel straight. Wherever your rod tip travels, your line will follow. So the biggest mistakes I see and why I want to bring this up is really important because you can go to a lot of fly shops or different places where you can get hands-on instruction how to fly cast. And I would really encourage that. If you have the ability or the access to someone that'll help you cast and a certified instructor, they don't have to be certified, but a very qualified instructor, whatever it may be, will really, really help you as far as learning how to cast. Now it's going to take a long time, like I call it just stream time, just getting out there. The more you cast, the more you fish, the more proficient you become. The trouble is I find sometimes is people get a good start on fly casting, then they get out in the practical part on a fishing trip or whatever else, and they're thinking about fishing more than they're casting. So I would really emphasize practice a lot on grass, just like a golfer would practice going to the driving range. So practice always helps a lot. Then that way it's going to be ingrained in your memory, your muscle memory, and you'll be much better off when you get to the water. You won't have to think about your casting as much as the fishing. But become a better caster will make you a much better angler. It's like going out to hunt and you don't know how to shoot a gun. Really it's not going to pan out that well. So there's different casts. We'll talk about those just briefly here, just so you can see what kind of fits into your type of fishing. The mistakes you're going to come across while you're casting on the water, especially when you start looking more into the fishing aspect of it, you'll start making some mistakes, and that's okay, but you want to know how to fix those mistakes. That's really the key, what I want to get across here. A lot of times I know when with casting or throwing anything, we're used to throwing baseballs and whatever, so the harder you throw, the further they go. A fly cast is different. It must be smooth and fluid, a nice fluid motion, a push-pull motion, if you will, and keep your hand locked up, So what happens a lot of times, you get too much wrist going, and what that does is it takes and it opens that loop up. So you get a big, fat, lazy loop. And I find one of the most common mistakes is people really get way back too far when they go. And so it's big arc. You want to kind of travel more in a straight line with your hand. And why I like to travel in a straight line with your hand, it loads the bottom of the blank of the rod. It uses that whole rod as a spring, basically. Now these rods come in fast action, medium action, slow action, and mid, tip flex actions. Those are all for different purposes. I mean, there's hundreds of kinds of components of rods and lines, and your shops and that will really help you with that. So I won't get into that, go down that rabbit hole with you at all. But the basic cast, like I said, is basically a straight line. Keep your rod tip traveling straight, your hands traveling straight and locked. Now when you're fishing a dry fly line, for example, you'll see some casting demos where they're putting a little wrist snap in. Now that can create a bit of a monster if you're streamer fishing or running big line, longer lines out there, because what can happen then is it's really easy to get unequal power. And if you get a loop, we call it a tailing loop, where it crosses in the air and it tangles, that's because your power is not smooth. You've got some irregular, there's a snap in there somewhere where it's changing the power in your line, and your tip's not unrolled completely straight before you come forward, so it's unequal power. So just when the tailing loops show up, is just watch and be smooth. The most important thing in any kind of cast, in my opinion, is the tug. You're going to want to load your line solid, so when you pull it out of the water and you get a back cast, stop up nice and high, the line will shoot back and stop. Always a stop. That is one of the most that's the hardest thing. I had a really good casting buddy of mine tell me that, certified caster, and he said fading is probably one of the most common errors everybody makes. You think you stop, but you actually fade. There's no stop. Even in the four, you're fading. So the stop back and stop forward. The stop is what makes the line tighten. And when the line is tight, you're going to feel a little tug on your rod. And you know that's when the rod is loaded and it's ready to push or pull, whichever direction you're going. So that is something to be very mindful of. Make sure that you got enough power to feel the tug in your rod. So also when you're casting, there's a lot of people who cast, there's a 30 feet of line outside your rod tip that matches the weight of your rod. It's written right here. It's a 6-weight rod, for example. So there'll be so many grains or grams of weight on that fly line 30 feet out of your rod tip typically that matches your rod. So it's easy to cast that 30 feet of line in the air. And you get that, and that's where you start. And you get the momentum. Your fly casting is coming along pretty good. You're pretty happy with it. Now it's time to put a few more tools in your toolbox. So how do we get more distance? Well, basically, with a straight basic cast, here's your line hand, and you just release the line out. You can feed out another 20, 30 feet beside you, and you just release it on the way through, and the line will just basically shoot out by itself if you have enough energy in the line. There's not much more to it than just release your line hand. So, you know, some guys get just locked up and they got one cast, and you know, that's what they got. So that works in some situations for them. They're out enjoying the day, and that's all right too. But we want to make sure that, so you want to be able to shoot the line. You want to also learn the single and double haul, which is your line hand here. It just speeds up your line going back, bring it back to your hand, and then we come forward. It's just splitting your hands, and you don't have to go a long ways. Like a long split is not necessary. Nice, you know, every time you move. So you can practice that just taking your rod level with the ground basically, and just watch it and keep it above the ground. That's a good way to practice your single and double haul. Roll cast, there's another cast you want to really learn. I fished for a lot of years without really knowing how to do a good roll cast. And now it's become one of my favorite and most used casts in many situations, because you may have trees in behind you. You want to pick up a line and move it to another target. You got to drift on a river or even on a lake if you're drifting a cork or something along the shorelines or whatever the case may be. You got to reposition. And a roll cast will really help you do that. So it's basically a roll cast it becomes a circle. It just kicks a nice D-loop in behind you. And when you have the line in behind you, like so, then you can push it forward. And then it's just basically driving a hammer, driving a nail. It's basically that motion that gets it out. But you got to set it up, stop, and push it down. And you feel the line want to load. It's got that weight, and a double tapered line works really good for that too. I use that on a lot of my dry fly fishing as well. So another thing you can, I'm just giving you these basics to look for, because if this is a style of fishing you're going to do, these casts will really come in handy. Here's another one for you guys that are throwing big heavy lines or heavy sink tip leaders, heavy flies, is a Belgium loop cast, which if you go a straight line cast, your line is traveling nice and straight and tight, and you're getting a lot of line speed out. You're pushing and pulling, you're getting a lot of power, you're loading the butt of your rod. That's really good. That will work. But if you want to really simplify a heavy situation where the line's heavy, you're dealing with gravity, or you have a sink tip line, you have heavy flies, a Belgium loop cast or an underhanded cast, when you come to the back, you're instead of going straight and stop, I'm going straight and I'm giving it a little whip at the back. It's a bit of kind of like a roll cast, if you will. It's coming underneath, but it's going way back and might be 40, 50 feet behind me, but it kicks up. The line is going up in behind you, and then just push it down. And you can do a really nice, neat little cast. Even 40 feet is what I would consider little. You can go longer than that. You can go 60, 80 feet with those casts if you want, but you go a 30, 40, 50 foot underhand cast and then shoot it going forward, you've done some good business with heavy lines. So that's one I would suggest for you folks that are dealing with heavy flies and fly lines. Now, another thing is wind, and I'd have a lot of, when you get on the saltwater, for example, and spend a lot of money going on trips like some of you may do, or you live on the salt, you're going to be dealing with wind a lot. So the biggest fault there is as a lot of guides will say, they get a lot of clients that show up and they can't cast well enough to reach the fish. You can't get to them with a 30-foot cast on a windy day. So you're going to really need to drive that fly line. You're going to, if we've got a wind facing you, you're going to pick it up. I'd pick it up and throw it up a little bit higher and then drive it straight down into the wind. But practice those casts on the grass. Practice them at home, practice them all over, and find out where you can get that power and make it work. You got to be able to make that shot before you get out on the water. Okay, so there's some really, really good videos out there. I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel here. There's some super good information out there now on the internet, and there's just no end to it. Then the situation comes where this is becoming more popular all the time is spey casting and spey fishing. Now, there's a bit of a misnomer that you always need the big two-handed rods to spey cast. If that's really what it was designed to do, is to throw a long line on big rivers, and also because they had trees rammed right behind them. They had no way to back cast, so it's got to be a roll cast with a lot more. It's a dynamic roll cast, I would say, and it's basically circles. Then we're dealing with circles and balance and positioning lines or anchors and so forth. But you can also do that with a single-handed rod, and I do that with dry flies and dry fly lines in smaller streams and rivers. It's a nice little roll cast or pickup. Can position your lines. You can do a little snake roll. You can do, snap tees, circle C, there's all these spey casts you can learn. So it's not just for fishing steelhead and salmon. They also will play into trout fishing, and you can get switch rods as well too, which is between a single-handed rod and a spey rod, kind of a hybrid. So they work really good for a lot of guys fishing big water and big streamers and that, using these switch rods too. They work really, really well. Then if you want to really expand your knowledge, I'm just throwing this all out there, It's a very, very wide topic, but there's reach casts for, like, you want to mend lines and rivers. You want to get that natural flow. This means this is either going to mean a fly is going to eat your fly or they're not. If there's drag on it, they'll refuse it. So you need to mend. You can throw mends up. You can throw mends upstream. Sometimes you're going downstream. That you'll see different videos on that. But basically, when you're casting, you can also reach cast, and that throws that line wherever your rod tip goes. See what I'm doing there? It's just a bit of a circle. When I'm ready to deliver it, I just throw that, and that becomes a bit of a reach cast or a mending cast or curve cast. And you can go this way, curves it the opposite way. You might have a rock. You have fast current, slow current before a rock, and you don't get the drift. So these mend casts are a bit to learn, but if you're fishing technical water, learn those technical casts. One more I want to mention too, especially if you lake guys, when you're lake fishing, multi-fly rigs maybe in streams and rivers, or if you're fishing chronomids with an indicator and then you got a swivel and a flyway down, so it's pretty tough. When you start straight line casting those, you're going to get tangled up, and what you want to do then is kind of forget everything I told you so far, is you want to open your loop, and that big fat lazy loop will flop those lines without getting tangled. So if you're getting tangled, you can open them up, but be mindful of that. That is for that purpose only. If you want to get power in your line for shooting or covering distance, don't use open loops. But for indicators and multi-fly rigs, it's a must. Now, if your leader is crashing on you at the end, you're casting also, and it kind of piles up or it doesn't straighten out the way it should, point your rod. That's when I would say that wrist movement. When I get, and it doesn't matter if it's an open loop for indicator fishing or any kind of a cast. If I'm finding my leader and my line is not straightening to the fly, I point my rod. So when you're finished your cast, point it. That doesn't mean point it down, point it up. And that will straighten that line. It's just that extra little bit that takes your leader and just straightens out beautifully. So thanks for watching that. I'll break the names of these casts down for you on this segment, so you can go and start doing some research, and then also try to match up the kind of equipment and fly lines for your type of fishing. There's some basic needs that you have for basic trout flies, rods. We'll talk about that. I'm going to do one segment on just equipment, a very short primer on what kind of a rod you should be looking at for different situations, and maybe 2 or 3 rods and you're covered for a lot of different types of water. And if you're just a dry fly guy, get a real nice dry fly rod and you're in the game. That's all you need to do. You're an all-around trout guy. Get yourself a 9-foot 6 weight or 5 weight or something like that, and you're good to go. So you don't have to buy all the different tools, but if you're going to reach out to different types of species, different types of casts, there's a never-ending array of equipment and casts to learn to make you a very, very good angler. So become proficient and then expand. All your casting will really, really help you out. So thanks for tuning in today. We'll catch you again next time. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Brent's Fly Fishing Instructional Series. He can be found on Brent's YouTube channel and Sport Fishing on the Fly.